Welcome to the Born on This Date channel, where we explore fascinating personalities who were born on this special day. Today, we'll look at the incredible life of Martin Luther, who ignited the Protestant Reformation and forever altered the history of Western Christianity. Martin Luther was born on November 10, 1483, in Alban, Germany, and his legacy is still considered one of the most influential in religious history. Martin Luther was the son of Hans and Margaretha Luther, two devoted Catholics. His father was a miner who worked hard to ensure Martin obtained an adequate education. Martin began attending a Latin school in Magdeburg at the age of 14, and at 17, he enrolled at the University of Erfurt, where he earned his bachelor's and master's degrees. In 1505, Martin Luther had a life-changing encounter. He was afraid during a big rainstorm and prayed to Satan, promising to become a monk if he lived. He kept his pledge and dropped out of law school to enter an Augustinian monastery in Erfurt later that year. His decision startled his family, particularly his father, but it signaled the start of his spiritual journey. Martin Luther was ordained as a priest in 1507. His experience at the monastery enriched his theological understanding. Luther became increasingly anxious about his own salvation and the essence of God's grace. He began studying theology intensely and eventually received his degree in 1512. Martin Luther was soon named professor of biblical studies at the University of Wittenberg, where he spent the remainder of his life teaching. Martin Luther's life was profoundly influenced by his interaction with the Catholic Church's practice of selling indulgences, which promised decreased punishment for wrongdoing. Johann Tetzel, a Dominican friar, was selling indulgences in adjacent towns to help fund the restoration of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Martin Luther was outraged, seeing this as a perversion of the faith, which prompted one of his most significant acts. On October 31, 1517, Martin Luther famously nailed his 95 Theses to the castle church door in Wittenberg. These theses were a series of propositions criticizing the church's sale of indulgences and other abuses. Luther intended to ignite a debate within the church, but his 95 Theses triggered a religious revolution known as the Protestant Reformation. With the invention of the printing press, Martin Luther's 95 Theses circulated rapidly throughout Europe. What began as a scholarly critique quickly spread to a far larger audience, sparking debate and garnering followers. Luther's ideas on salvation by faith alone and the power of Scripture appealed to many who were unsatisfied with the Church's doctrines. Martin Luther's ideas gained traction, and the Catholic Church saw him as a threat. In 1520, Pope Leo X issued a papal bull ordering Luther to retract 41 of his 95 Theses. Martin Luther resisted and openly burned the papal bull. This act of defiance resulted in his expulsion in 1521. Luther, however, remained undeterred and continued to advocate for reform. Martin Luther was summoned to the Diet of Worms in 1521, where he would face Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. Luther was requested to repudiate his works, but he stayed firm in his beliefs, famously proclaiming, "Here I stand, I can do no other." Despite being labeled an outlaw, Martin Luther was sheltered by powerful backers, including Frederick the Wise, Elector of Saxony. Following the Diet of Worms, Martin Luther was put into hiding at Wartburg Castle for his own safety. During his time there, he started translating the New Testament from Greek to German. This translation was important because it made the Bible available to ordinary people, who could now read Scripture in their native tongue, so diminishing the Church's authority over religious interpretation. Martin Luther's followers began to organize their own congregations, resulting in the formation of a new branch of Christianity called Lutheranism. In 1530, the Augsburg Confession, a formal statement of Lutheran doctrines, was presented. This was a pivotal milestone in the development of Protestantism. Martin Luther's views spread quickly throughout Germany and other regions of Europe, shaping religious thought for years. In 1525, Martin Luther married Katharina von Bora, a former nun. This was a daring decision at the time, as clergy were expected to stay celibacy. Luther and Katharina had 6 children together, and their marriage set a standard for Protestant clergy marriage. Martin Luther's ideas on family life, marriage, and women were innovative at the time. Martin Luther continued to write and speak in his old years, seeking to reform the Church. He pushed for children's education, supported public schools, and believed in the value of Scripture and in singing and worship. Luther's hymns, like "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," were integral parts of Protestant worship. Despite his accomplishments, Martin Luther's later years were fraught with controversy. His severe writings against the Jewish community, particularly his 1543 essay on the Jews and their lies, are still extremely upsetting and regarded a tragic chapter in his legacy. Luther's opinions fueled centuries of anti-Semitism, and this element of his life has received a great deal of criticism. Martin Luther died on February 18, 1546, in his hometown of Ilben. His death marked the end of a life that transformed Christianity. Though he did not survive to see his reforms fully implemented, the Protestant Reformation had far-reaching consequences, influencing not just religious life but also politics, education, and society. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of Martin Luther's incredible life. His bold challenge to the authority of the Catholic Church, insistence on Scripture as the ultimate source of religious authority, and emphasis on salvation through faith alone are still cornerstones of Protestant belief today. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell as we continue to explore remarkable people born on this day.